board meeting to order on Tuesday, September 14th at 6 o'clock p.m. We are meeting at the Cedar Creek Township Hall. For those of you who have not been with us before, the format is as follows. There are two public comment options. The first applies to anything you see before you on the agenda. The agendas are at that table to the back of the hall. You have a 2-minute presentation time frame. The second option is after board comments and applies to any topic that is on your mind of concern that applies to the township. Once again, you have a 2-minute presentation time frame. This meeting will be taped by Andy O'Reilly of Lakeshore Creative Services. It will be posted on our website within the next several days. We're going to make a slight departure in the way we open up for questions this evening. That's with respect to the Maple River presentation with that portion of our agenda. Rather than wait until the end of the meeting to ask questions with that portion, we'll open that up to question and answers. So this is designed so those presenters don't have to wait until the end of the meeting. So we don't want to make them stay late into the evening. After that, we'll return to our regular format. With that said, we'll begin now with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Bain, if you would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm never going to get it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Find my agenda. Okay, if I could have a motion. Oh, yes. I do. I need Cheryl, if you could call the roll.
Okay.
Our clerk is, I'm sorry, our clerk is on vacation, so Cheryl Sloan is going to fill in for her. Cheryl is our deputy clerk. Cheryl, if you could please fill in, and if you could please call the roll, I'd appreciate it.
Trustee Wright?
Here.
Trustee Foster?
Here.
Treasurer Jarvis?
Here.
Supervisor Arts?
Here.
Thank you.
And may I please have a motion for approval of the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Are there any questions or discussions on the agenda? Hearing none, then may I have a roll call to approve? Yes.
Trustee Wright?
Yes.
Trustee Foster?
Yes.
Treasurer Jarvis?
Yes.
Supervisor Arts?
Yes. Motion carries. The agenda is approved. Okay, we have before us our first guest, who is every year our township goes through a rigorous audit, and I do mean rigorous. We pull more paperwork than you can imagine, and that does not fall mostly on my shoulders, which I'm eternally grateful for. But our auditor is with us from Brickley DeLong, and he is here with us to do a brief presentation. Eric is a CPA and a partner from Brickley DeLong. Eric Van Dopp, if you'll take it away.
Thank you. I'm Eric. It's nice to see all of you. Nice to see you too, Andy. So, all right. I'll keep this brief, but I'm here for your benefit. So if you guys have questions on anything I talk about, or perhaps on something I don't talk about that you want to ask about, that would be fine. Just jump right on in. Most of what I talk about I'll try to keep up on the screen, but you guys do have your printed books. Everything for the most part, that I bring up will be in the books, and frankly, a lot more things that I don't talk about as well. So, let's see here. Not my computer, I got to get used to it. What are we doing here? Okay. Oh, there we go. All right, we'll just tuck myself in back here. In the front of the Auditors Report on pages 1 and 2 is the Independent Auditors Report, and this is where we express an opinion on the financial statements. That's what makes this an audit, otherwise it's just a set of financial statements. The top of the second page has the opinion paragraph, which says the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The same paragraph I read every year, and that's what we call an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion, and it means to the best of our testing and procedures you are materially correct. Your financial statements are good to go. So, all right, why don't we look at some numbers though? Little fuzzy. There you go.
Perfect.
Okay, this is the general fund. It's a little summarized just to fit it all on the screen. If you want to see it all broken out by department, that's on page 28, but we'll keep it summarized here for purposes of this presentation. Total revenues of $762,071 this year. You can see that's an increase of about $82,000 from last year. Property taxes are up about $10,000 due to an increase in taxable value. Licenses and permits continue to do well. Those are up to about $85,000, increase of about $19,000 due to continued building and other projects in the township. Intergovernmental revenues state are up about $33,000, with including some grants for COVID, elections, and then transfer station improvements. And then intergovernmental revenues local there of $12,930. That's new this year, and that's the senior service monies being passed through to the township by the county. Other revenues are pretty similar to last year. On the expenditure side, total expenditures of $627,919, an increase of about $26,000 from last year. General government, which pretty much encompasses everything that's not listed separately in here, so it's your treasurer, clerk, supervisor, buildings and grounds, all that kind of stuff. There's a little bit of a bump in there. A couple things there. First of all, that encompasses elections. Obviously, last year we had the presidential election, 2 primaries, and I think there might have been a special election in there too. So there's a lot of election activities last year. And then buildings and grounds were up a little bit as well, which encompassed some of the improvements made to your website and other computer costs. The health and welfare there, that's a new line, and that encompasses the senior services matter again. As you can see, the money came in and went out for that. And then capital outlay this year, $48,433, includes the transfer station improvements, some electrical service upgrades, and the computers. So that leaves you with an increase in fund balance of $134,152 and ending fund balance of $1,139,375. So the general fund had a good year. Any questions on the general fund? All right. Also got a small slide in here on your other fund, your road improvement fund. Not a whole lot going on in here this year as far as there being new projects or anything like that. You guys have done a couple of road improvements over the last few years and assessed them. So this year with no new road improvements, you're just collecting the assessments, and you can see $11,281 coming in for that, and you've got ending fund balance there of about $18,000. All right. That's my last slide. You should have a couple of letters also. I don't have those up on the screen, but I'll just cover them briefly. The one letter starts off with, we have audited the financial statements of the governmental activities. This is our auditor's letter to those charged with governance. And basically, as I've mentioned in the past, we're just required to put certain things in writing and provide them to the board. So looking through this letter, there were no new accounting policies adopted this year. There were no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. Audit adjustments are on attachment A. There were no disagreements with management on accounting or auditing principles or anything like that. So there's really not a whole lot to talk about in here. It's a pretty vanilla letter, but we are required to provide it. So just letting you know what it is and why you have it. And the other letter you've got is the auditor's recommendation letter. As a reminder, we're not here to audit your internal controls or express an opinion on them. However, in the course of doing an audit, we obtain an understanding of your policies and procedures, and in the course of doing our audit, if items come to our attention, we bring them to your attention in the form of a recommendation letter. However, that's not the intent of the audit. We're not saying this is all there is or anything like that. These are just things we came across. I always emphasize it's important to have good policies, procedures, and controls in place throughout the year to make sure things are done properly. So just a couple minor recommendations this year. Continue to work on improving the year-end closing procedures just to reduce the amount of audit adjustments we have to have. That's just an ongoing recommendation. The controls surrounding the preparation of financial statements. This is kind of a silly comment that I have to give to most of my smaller entities, but we draft the financial statements as part of the audit. However, they're still your financial statements, and you should have somebody with knowledge and skills in drafting and doing that kind of thing and oversee the process. Most smaller entities obviously don't have a CPA finance director type person, so we just have to give that recommendation. I understand that you're not going to hire that person. We give the recommendation and you acknowledge it and choose not to make any changes, and that's fine as well. These are just suggestions. The state's not really concerned about that one either because they see it all the time. And the third one, I know with the BSNA coming online and all that and some of the processes changing, just a reminder as you guys do journal entries to make sure that there is a documented review and approval on journal entries by an appropriate official. Those are the recommendations we had for this year. Honestly, at the end of the day, the audit went really well. I know Stephanie and Heather, we drive them nuts, even Linda a little bit, and others as well. So we certainly appreciate the time and effort the township goes into getting ready for the audit and accommodating us while we're out here. It was nice to get out here again this year. We had to skip last year because we weren't allowed to come out then, but we were this year, so it was nice to see everybody face to face again. So that's it for me. Before I have a seat, any final questions from anybody? Otherwise, certainly a thank you to the board as well for having us to do the audit, and I will look forward to seeing you all again next year. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Eric, as always, I just want to thank you. I personally have worked with Eric for a number of years since my days at Harbor Hospice, and I appreciate his expertise, that of Brickley DeLong, and Eric personally. I know that in talking with Muskegon Charter Township, Jennifer Hodges says she personally misses you as well. So I just thought I'd pass that on. So thank you very much for the audit. I appreciate it. So with that said, we also have with us this evening Scott Faulkner, Executive Director, and Marty Holtgren, PhD, Principal Watershed Scientist, both of the Muskegon Watershed Assembly, located at Ferris State University in Big Rapids. They are here with us this evening to talk about a study concerning the potential of reopening the Maple River. I have provided our board with background information from a 2005 study, and Scott and Marty would be so kind to take it from here. I am going to, before that though, I'm going to plug in.
Gotcha. You're the tech person for the night, right? Thank you, Supervisor Ernst. While Linda's getting it all set up, to introduce ourselves, I'm Scott Faulkner. This is Marty Holtgren, and another Muskegon River Watershed Assembly board member, George Hartwell, also lives not far from here. He decided to come down and join us. So we're really privileged to be here tonight to speak to you about a project that we're really excited about. And as it happened, we met last night at Bridgeton Township, so 2 in a row. I think my wife thinks I've left home by now. I'm missing a Monday and a Tuesday. Did I hear you correctly? You want us to tell you when we change slides? Okay, just wanted to be sure.
Now,
Sometimes the right and left
I think you're all set actually. It's what you want is on the screen. It's treating it like a second screen, Linda.
There we go.
You're fine.
oh,
Perfect. And then the advance is probably the right.
Yep.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. So thanks again. A little bit about the Muskegon River watershed. I know you all can see here, so I'm kind of be looking back and forward if that's okay. We're based in Big Rapids, as Supervisor Arts said. We're on the Ferris State University campus and have been for years and years. The organization's about 25 years old. 3 employees. We're not a giant non-for-profit, but we are a not-for-profit. And we have a number of committees, however, and a large board, 15 people from a lot of diverse backgrounds. We have scientists on the board. We have folks from energy. We have folks from other parts of the business world. So I like to think we have a rigorous board. George, I think you would probably agree with that. We have a pretty rigorous board. How are we funded? Through grants, through donations. We have memberships available. Everyone, we have memberships available. I don't want to miss an opportunity. We have events and sponsorships. One of the most recent things we did was during the month of August, COVID taught us a lesson last year. We used to have a single day where we do trash bash, where we try to do as much of the Muskegon River with as many teams as we could on a single day. That didn't work well with social distancing last year. So we learned that we could spread out a little bit. So this year we did it with the entire month of August, and you could pick your day and put your team together and do it. We had over 350 participants, many teams. The largest team was 53 people, and we cleaned up almost the entire watershed. And to put that in perspective, the watershed starts at Higgins Lake, 219 miles away from Lake Michigan. Goes through 9 counties. So it's a big watershed. I live on the watershed myself. I live on Croton Pond, and so just upriver about 20 miles, something like that. And if you're like I am, you get to know your own part of the river, and you think that is the river because you don't go to the ends. And it's an entirely different experience to go to Higgins Lake, just like it is to go to Lake Michigan or Muskegon Lake. So a little bit more about MRWA. Our mission, I know you can't read this, but I'll read it to you. The Muskegon River Watershed Assembly, we're dedicated to the preservation, the protection, the restoration and sustainable use of the Muskegon River, the land it drains, and the life it supports through education, scientific, and conservation initiatives. And just to back up, that's a lot of words, right? Preservation, protection, and restoration. The Maple River Project is clearly restoration. We want to restore something that was decommissioned, if you will, 150 years ago. It could be one of the most interesting things literally around the whole United States to do, bring a dead river back to life again. It happened right in your backyard. We're thrilled about that, the concept. Want to do it the right way, want to do it in a thoughtful way. We don't want to do any harm in the process, right? So we want to do it the right way, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about. And I just get lost in the keyboard, there's too many keys. So what do we do? What does the Muskegon River Watershed do for a living, if you would? There's a number of different things. We do restoration projects like this. This will by far be our largest single effort to date. We have other plans to make it bigger after this, but for now, we're going to concentrate on Maple River. So restoration is a big deal. Sometimes that looks like dam removals. There are over 100 dams around the watershed. 3 big ones that we all know about, Croton, Hardy, and Rogers, straight up the channel, right? But off to the sides in these tributaries and the Little Muskegon and other rivers, there are tons of little dams doing literally no good anymore. They were put in to run a mill. They were put in to do other things, maybe an agricultural block to keep a field from draining, etc. And it sounds like a great idea at the time, and it probably was, but once you stop using it for that, bad things happen to dams over time, just like any infrastructure just like a barn that you don't paint, right? It starts to fall apart and 100 years goes by and now it's not functioning as a dam. So we're in the process of taking out ones where we're invited to. We're not showing up and blowing up dams in the middle of the night, bad plan. But if somebody says, look, I have a dam that was put on my property 100 years ago, it's part of a trout stream. We want to reestablish the trout stream. Well, the dam heats the water, allows the water to warm, and the trout don't want it anymore. So we take the dam out, try to restore the habitat, and the trout are happy again. If the trout are happy, we're happy. So we also do a lot of water quality studies, things like that. I'm participating tomorrow in a fish shocking. I never even knew there was such a thing, but if you want to know what kind of fish you have in the river, you take this big Ghostbuster thing in the water, you shock the fish, they float to the surface, you count them, you revive them, off they go. That's how it works. Marty's going to teach me about that. It's exciting. We do bank erosion. I know in your part of the river, bank erosion is a real deal, right? And the Maine family knows more about it than anybody because it steals your property a little bit every year. And bank erosion is commonplace in rivers. It's particularly commonplace where you've got crossings, where you have dams involved. There's always going to be pools that fall in after that, and they erode the banks after that. Whenever you funnel water through a tube underneath a road, when it comes out the other side, it's guaranteed to cause some erosion. After a while, the banks erode and they start to collapse. So one of the things we focus on is how do we make those banks more stable. Different mitigation techniques for different stream sizes and so on, but that's what we do. Fish stocking, reforestation, and the Voyage of Discovery is an organized tour of the Muskegon that if you're of a mind to do so, you can start at Higgins Lake and paddle the whole thing, 219 miles in 9 days. And maybe only one person in here has done that trip. That's George Hartwell. He and his grandson did that 2 years ago, is that right? Super cool. I was going to do that this year. I failed. I made it about 2/3 of the way through. So, Marty, would you like to come up and talk a little bit more about the individual things we're doing? Thank
Slide
you.
4.
I forgot the slides. I'm so sorry.
I'm a rule follower, Scott. Well, it's good to be here, trustees. And what we're about from the watershed perspective, it's about restoration. And we have almost a 25-year history. And the exciting piece to me, there's some projects that we look for, we identify, and then there's projects that kind of come to us because people bring them. This is that situation. About 5 years ago, I met Roger Peacock, and it's awesome when somebody comes to you and said, hey, we have a problem, and you can work within the community. And then I met the Baines about a year later, and it's been for me, it's been a learning process where the community has been educating me on the needs for this project. It's also exciting because, as Scott alluded to, I don't know of an example where 4.6 miles of river could be kind of reawakened. The opportunity here, it's phenomenal to actually add mileage to a river. So that restoration piece is very exciting to us. Slide 5. And that hits on the common goals. And this project has all the attributes of finding common goals within a community. We've had, about 5 or 6 years ago, there was a first public meeting that took place where we had folks from the community come and share. And there were issues identified that we knew we needed to address. And one example, if you divert water from one channel into the other one, what is that going to do to the main channel? Is there still going to be boat navigation that can occur because you have water diverted? That's a major concern. So that's something we've been able to look at scientifically, and then we can come up with solutions for those types of issues. Slide 6. The exciting piece to me is it's the scientific studies too. And the opportunity here, like Scott had mentioned, is to use really the social science and getting us all involved together and then looking at the scientific information, because there's not a one-size-fits-all for this type of project. It's complex. There's many ways that this restoration could happen. So it's bringing all those different elements of economics too into making sure that you have the best crafted project that meets the needs of the community and also meets the need of the health of the watershed. We're on slide 7. And one piece, Scott had mentioned, this is probably the largest project that we will have undertaken to date. It will likely also be one of the most expensive, just because of the logistics of the restoration, the studies, there'll have to be road stream crossing work. But what we can provide is grant writing and assisting. We have a partnership right now of about 20 different organizations that all have competencies to help write grants. So that's an exciting piece, is being able to leverage all those resources and come up with funds to be able to pull off a project of this scale. And another piece is forming those knowledge partnerships. I love this picture of this. He's a high school student. Sorry, folks back there can't see it. It's a picture of a 16-year-old holding a lake sturgeon that was caught about a mile away from here in the Muskegon River. And it was one of those exciting moments. He was local. He lived about a half mile away from where that fish was caught. We'd gone out for about a week and hadn't found a sturgeon. And we were on the boat, and he said, Marty, I think we should go up there. And guess what? That's where the fish was. So it's one of those examples of just, is having those partnerships that make it succeed. And a project of this scale needs those partnerships. And I should mention, and Scott will get into this later, but Also, the strength of this partnership too is who it brings. I think out of most of the partnerships we work on, this is the one that has the most community support. So people that have come to us and really pushed, we've got to find an issue to the severe flooding that's taking place, to the property loss, and to a dry river channel that's not providing much besides mosquito habitat at this point. So, Scott?
Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Slide 14. Our first meeting, and this is a mistake that's actually on your handout there. It was actually August 3rd is when our first stakeholder meeting, so not in June. So it was not as long ago as it was, but this was at the stream in Newaygo, and we had folks there from Muskegon County. We had the emergency services director. We had the emergency services director from Newaygo County, Abby Watkins. We had 4 folks from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that was in. So we are developing a really strong relationship with them. We were just there last week in Detroit, the Detroit offices with them. So if you're going to bring in the big guns to do things like hydrological studies, they know what they're doing. They have the resources behind them. They have the employees that they can bring to the field. So they were there. We had folks from the state level. We had 4 Muskegon River Watershed Assembly representatives there. Who am I missing, Marty? Anybody else?
Michigan DNR.
We had Janice from right at the river in Bridgeton Township. And only the reason that Supervisor Arts was not there is because she was not invited, so I'm here to apologize for not inviting her in the first place. I was thinking, oh, this is a Bridgeton Township thing, and they're thinking, no, you gotta go down river and talk. So anyway, I'm pretty sure you would have been there if you had been invited. So shortly after I aired, I showed up at your office, begging for forgiveness and wanted to go over the project.
And we're all good.
And here we are now, so life is good. Next slide, which is 15. So where are we headed? Basically 2 things. So I've been the executive director for the organization for a grand total of about 6 months. Not that long. I'm a quick learner, I like to think anyway. And I love what this organization does. I like to group it into 2 simple things. We do small scale projects and large scale projects. Small ones, I kind of mentioned it before. We have partnerships with Trout Unlimited, for example. They're deeply interested in restoring trout habitat wherever they can find it, right? So we have that in common with things like small dam removals. So working on 3 dam removals right now, Altona, Kinney, and Buckhorn Creeks, which are all largely in Mecosta County area. They're great. And we're funding these projects with partners. I'm a taxpayer in Croton Township. You're probably a lot of taxpayers here in Cedar Creek Township. We're not talking about raiding the treasury here. We're talking about writing grants, finding funding from all kinds of different sources to make big projects happen. So we're not here in any way to ask for any money whatsoever. And I want the board to be well aware of that, so which is why I'm still here, right?
You heard that, Eric, right?
Say it again. Yeah. And then we've got larger watershed improvements, and for that we need larger scale partners, right? That's why the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, NOAA, for example, and other agencies at the federal and the state level. FERC is deeply involved, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Wherever there's a hydroelectric dam, they're involved, and so we have to engage them at that level. And so we have those partnerships. And then the biggest projects that we're looking at right now, the number 1 large one is Maple Island. Maple Island is a big Maple River, Maple Island. We kind of use them interchangeably. It's really Maple River. And for those of you that may not know the background on that, it used to be part of the Muskegon. It was called an anabranch. So an anabranch in a river is where the river comes along, it splits in half, goes around an island, and joins back together. They're about the same size. And in this particular case, they're almost identical in size. Is that right, Marty? And of course, if I'm a logger thinking, I need this water a little higher, what are we going to do? They just closed up one end of it and said, we're done. And it worked for a while. And there it sits today. So that's a big one. Marion Dam is another one. And then we're also looking at more ambitious projects later. We're hoping that the Maple River project serves as a catalyst for us to be able to do reconnection projects even at Croton, even at Hardy, even at Rogers Dams. There's all kinds of new technology for fish ladders and things like that that we may be able to look at. And that way we might be able to find sturgeon all the way up to Higgins Lake before you know it, maybe even in our lifetimes. Maybe. In your lifetime, possibly. Mine, maybe not so much. We're on slide 11. So how do we evaluate a project? So this is kind of into our thinking at Muskegon River Watershed Assembly, and how do we look at things? It's not just an environmental exercise for us, okay, right? Do we love the environment? Yes. Are we looking for the restoration of the Muskegon River 100% of the time? Yes, we are. That's one perspective. Is this project, for example, in this particular project, is restoring the Maple River a good thing, a net good thing for the watershed? The answer is yes. Absolutely it would be. With the caveat that we have to do some studying before we know the answer to that question exactly. The second one is the economic impact. What does this do to stakeholders in the area, right? If it's good for the environment, destroys the economy, bad plan. We have to have an economic answer and say, if we can do things, however, that prevent farmers from losing ground, that we can prevent flooding in a large area, those are net gains economically, and so it makes sense economically. I should add that we're also funding an economic impact analysis with MSU Center for Economic Analysis as a part of this project. So they'll be able to cook the numbers and say, look, if you restore this river, this is the net gain to the watershed. This is what it will do to stimulate the economy. This is how much product and land you'll stop using if we do this properly. So we want to look at the numbers. So that's the second one. And then finally, it's all about people. If you have something that's good for the watershed, good economically, but nobody wants it, that project is dead. There's no question about it. We're not here to push this project on anybody, but for those folks that want it, that they understand that it would be valuable for Cedar Creek Township, and it makes sense economically, and it's great for the watershed. We're 100% behind those kinds of projects only. I think exclusively. We don't want to mess around with either the social fabric of a township or a state or anything else or a county. We don't want to do projects that are dumb economically. If something costs $2 million to do and there's no net gain to the watershed, which is just an entirely waste of money. And I wasn't raised that way. And so we have to have positive answers for those three perspectives. So we don't want to do any harm in the process. So our question for you, and this is the last slide for me and then one more for Marty, is how can we help Cedar Creek Township? There's some ideas. If you think Maple River is a good idea for your township, we will do a lot of the heavy lifting. We will be here for you. We would ask that you provide a single point of contact at the township level, and recommended. It'd be great. You probably don't have the time, Linda, but we'd ask for the supervisor to be that person, because it all flows from you when information comes in, and we'd like you to consider that as a possibility to just be that point of contact for us. And that's also Muskegon County. We will have some contact already with the Emergency Services Director. We probably want some more communication at the county level, and perhaps you can introduce us to the right folks there, because we don't have relationships with everybody there. We would be the primary source, meaning Muskegon River Watershed would be the primary source to coordinate meetings, whether it's with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We have a fellowship with DTE Energy. They're providing us with a fellow for 2 years. We're going to assign that person to this project, so we have skin in the game. We have a full-time person working on it. And there are going to have to be stakeholder meetings. There'll be scientific studies going on in the field. And that just requires people to keep things moving forward. And that would be our role here. We want to be that trusted third party to say, this is what's going on in the field, and to coordinate with those entities. And so what we will promise you tonight is to coordinate and communicate with you clearly on what we're doing. That's why we're here tonight. We want to know exactly what we're thinking, what our aspirations are for this project, and to answer any questions. And that's it for my last slide. And Marty's got one more, and then we're kind of done, and we'll open it to questions for everyone. So,
just wanted to speak really briefly about the process. And what we're asking for is the support for the hydraulic study from the Army Corps. There's a few other pieces I just wanted to describe after that you could expect. Scott mentioned the economic study through MSU, and then the hydraulic study through Army Corps of Engineers. There would also be a phase throughout, actually, of public involvement. So we would keep our advisory committee and the public involved throughout the process. And probably 3 to 4 meetings a year with agencies and also with the community. And then the final piece would be the on-the-ground restoration. It's going to be multiple phases. We have some ideas about what the first next steps should be as far as the restoration, but that'll come as we get the scientific information back and talk to the community. I do know what your first choice is, by the way. But
little dynamite in the bulldozer.
I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell. So with that,
Hey, one more thing, Marty, if you wouldn't mind, is one of the things that I learned in our field trip that was really well put on by Janice Barnard. She took us down, and we had a blast. We spent half a day wandering around where the Maple River used to be, the different channels. One of the things that there is a fascinating and really beautiful stand of wild rice that has particular significance for the Native American populations. And Marty, would you mind explaining a little bit more about that? And I'll talk a little bit about our relationship with the Little River Band.
Sure. And we've been working with the Little River Band for about 3 years, looking at the wild rice stand. And in this area, it's actually a very, all wild rice is special. This happens to be a very rare one. It's a threatened species of wild rice. It also is very culturally important, and it's part of their creation stories and has deep symbolism. So restoring this river and the rice will have a huge cultural impact, and it's exciting that they are committed to working through this with us, going through the restoration and making sure that what happens to the wild rice is going to be beneficial for a 7-generation period.
Thanks, Marty. And one of the other side benefits to working with the Little River Band is they are likely to be what's called a non-federal sponsor, to say, we're the ones that want this to happen. Great things happen if a tribal nation makes that request to the federal government. That means we don't have to pay for anything. That means for the hydrological study, there is no match requirement. We don't have to go find $200,000 to do a $400,000 study. It's paid for. So that's one of the reasons why we're excited to work with them. They love the cultural side of it, the resource, and the fact that this was a very important native part of where they grew up, so to speak, and to be able to put that back together is very meaningful to them. So we're really excited to be working with them in a day-to-day sort of way, right these days, Marty, so it's fun. With that, be happy to entertain any questions from the board, and then probably from your taxpayers.
Scott, one thing I did reach out to Matt Farah, who is the director of the Department of Public Works. He was not able to be with us this evening, but he will see this on tape. And he did say Capitol very interested in being part of or knowing more and being part of this program. So I did want to underscore that.
Okay.
So he just was not able to be here.
Thank you for that. I guess I should mention too that we're after a letter of support. That's one of the reasons we're here tonight. If you like what you see and you say, yes, we want to do this as a township, that leads itself to a letter of support that we then use to create funding for the project. So that's just a demonstration of your local support.
And the board has a copy underneath your packet. I wrote today a letter which you have in front of you. And I had just a brief moment to share that with Scott. So if you would take a moment and look at that. And also in your notes that I sent to you earlier with your packet, I explained the motion that I would like to present tonight.
I'll make that motion. I read through the packet.
Okay.
And I think this is, I like the project. I think it's great for our community and everyone involved.
I will second that motion. I did read all of the material too. I think it's great that you guys really did a lot of homework to present to us tonight. I mean, this is great, and I think, and I like the way you presented it. It's very understandable, and I think it's great.
For purposes of the tape, I am going to read that motion. The motion is Cedar Creek Township supports the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly's effort to secure funding for a comprehensive hydrological study of the Maple River area in conjunction with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. This motion does not create or guarantee any future obligation to the township in any way for any part of this project going forward. So that is the motion that Bob has made and Peggy has seconded. Also, as part of that motion, may I have permission to send the letter that you have you had a moment to read this letter?
Yes.
May I have permission to send a letter of support to the Fremont Area Community Foundation to accompany this motion?
Yes.
Okay. They have both then agreed that this letter may accompany that motion. Then I will sign this letter And then I will, Scott, I will give you a copy of this for your files, and then I will send this directly to the Fremont Area Community Foundation.
Should we get a roll call on that?
Yes,
Okay, trustee Wright,
Yes.
thank you.
trustee Foster,
Yes.
treasurer Jarvis,
Yes.
and supervisor Arts.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, board. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.
For the audience, do any of you have any questions about this? Mr. Bain, I should let you know that you are mentioned in this letter. And I said yesterday that it was in fact just fortuitous that you happened to walk in to pay your taxes. And
Really fortuitous.
I've been with these guys for years now. We've been looking at this. I want to just express my gratefulness to the board. This means a lot to our farm and our family.
You've shown us great support.
We've been fighting this for 4 generations, and it's really hard to find help. You're limited what you can do for bank. Try to keep a bank from moving. I've lost driveways. We've moved livestock. We've had water in our barns, and I'm not saying this is the end-all, cure-all, but it sure would. It feels nice that somebody's listening. So I really appreciate the board's support. So, and these guys are number one, and they got a team behind them now. So there's a long ways to go, but it's more than just talk now. And half this river goes through state game area. It does not get used. So this project is more than just Cedar Creek.
yes,
It's way past that, because you got a whole area that's set aside for the public to use, that gets used about 30 to 60 days a year when whitetail hunting. Otherwise it's non-used. It's a shame. And that's what I look forward to this project, to allow more people to enjoy the outdoors and to access that river and use it. So,
Comments like that get us fired up.
well, you know how
Thank
I'm
you.
fired up about
Yes,
it.
sir. You were
Like, live
kind
long
enough
enough to see it,
You were
so.
kind enough to give us the tour. Thank you for that.
But this is all Roger that started it, so Roger Peacock is the one that deserves the credit for it all, so.
well, it was your comments that you made helped me write the letter. And, I had a kind of a draft to work by, but it was your personal comments that made writing this letter so much easier. And I truly believe, being a grant writer, that it is the personal comments that make all the difference when you receive, when someone is trying to give money or someone's requesting money from you. It's those personal comments that people make that make you more willing to give money out. So I am very grateful to you for walking through our door at that very important moment when I'm trying to write something. So, yes, sir.
I'm Roger Peacock, a former resident and current property owner, and I'd like to add what David has said. I lived on Maple Island. That was our family farm. Terry Bain and I are cousins, and we listened to his grandfather, my uncle, and my dad talking about this river and the floods and all the things that went on the 4 generations or more, no, 7 generations. That this river has been dying for 150 years. And Terry was up. I worked for Michigan State University until 2009. And Terry, every time he saw me, said, "Roger, you gotta help me. We gotta get this river opened up." And like everybody that has a full-time job and they're farming on the side and doing other things, I shake my head, yep, we better do that. And when I retired and he came to me, when we were standing in water, that was flooding Billy's house with water, I couldn't say no any longer. And so we tackled trying to move this thing along. And it's ironic, I looked at the records that I had on this project, and it's just a little over 10 years ago that we had a public meeting in this Township Hall that kicked off the graduate study that we had from the University of Michigan, that you can access a copy of that on the Muskegon River Watershed Assembly's web page, and it overwhelmingly supports this activity scientifically. And what they're adding to it now is just, as was said, the big gun scientific stuff. So potentially this can happen in a positive way. I've jokingly said that in another flood, there may be some folks that would place some small gun stuff in a proper place.
The camera is running.
Scratch that.
Just a quick reminder of meetings here.
Not to incite anything. Let's do this positively and make it all happen.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate your comments. It's great to be part of this, so thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, board.
I was just curious, I look at the map over your shoulder there, so where it says Maple River down, and that's just an empty channel right now on the bottom right
Marty?
there?
Back me up
Pretty
here,
much,
Marty.
guys, right?
Pretty much,
Till you
there's a
get to the
little, some
lower-
springs
Yeah.
that feed into it.
Then it crosses
But it
here right
used to
into
be,
the next township.
yeah,
It's easier to understand the
basically
whole
full of
thing.
mosquitoes.
Yeah,
A lot
and
of
it's
them.
interesting too, because the area we're talking about is in 2 counties and 2 townships, right? Which makes it more complicated, but it doesn't. It's actually more funding resources. So we can go to 2 counties, and it seems like a bigger project when you're going after a 2-county project too. So we're hopeful that we can do something meaningful and do something, and not in a large number of years, in a small handful of years.
Yeah, the good news is it's still there, right? After all those years, it's amazing that historic channel still remains.
Yeah.
I did want to ask one question, and not to be a downer, but are there going to be any negative implications? We should ask.
Yeah, absolutely, and part of it is the hydrological study is designed to answer those questions.
Okay.
If we take this out, what is the likely outcome for a rain that's 10 inches, for a rain that's a 50-year flood or a 100-year flood event? What's likely to happen? Because it's not pretty now.
Okay.
And at the same time, when we do this study, we're hoping to learn more. Marty, what would you add to that?
Yeah, that's the interesting piece to this, because there are those potential pitfalls. But the encouraging thing, there's no one size fits all for a project like this because of the uniqueness. So there may be 15, 20 different scenarios where you address all the issues. So we don't know how it's going to look, but we're confident that the issues can be addressed. Like the one I brought up was the water level in the main stem, but that's
Okay.
having a water budget, for between the 2 rivers. And so at this time, from the research that Roger alluded to and during this hydraulic study, it's just going to allow us to make more informed decisions to address the issues. I don't see any insurmountable hurdles that we
Okay.
have at this time. It's a good.
And I should say also that the initial feedback that we've gotten from folks like the tribe, folks like the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, they're excited about this project. This is something really special. This are resuscitating 4.5 miles of river that was blocked off for 150 years. That's just plain cool. And if I'm a bureaucrat sitting in an office, I want to do cool things. And so my job is to be sure that they're as excited about it as we are and to keep it moving in that direction.
And the Army Corps has done projects like this on the Mississippi,
Oh, yeah.
especially.
right.
Many of them that still exist today.
Mm-hmm.
That's been there for 100 years. They've done restored anti-branches and maintained water flows and controlled. They put a structure in it so they can control the water and hopefully not hurt somebody else. Having 2 of us flooded don't do anybody any good.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
But the Army Corps is that when they come in and they joined, now you're talking a whole different group. They've got structures like this. The whole Mississippi Channel's got structures all over it like this, that they can control some of the flow that goes into it, and not flood somebody else out. I don't wanna kick the can over to the other side of the
To the
road and
other
flood
side,
somebody
yeah.
else.
Exactly.
That doesn't solve the problem. But if you read that study, there's one flood that the river would have went over the bank in the last 100 years, and that was 1986,
Yep.
when we got 13 and a half inches of rain in a 24-hour period. That's one. I've had 8 of them come over my road and almost into my house because that thing is closed. It's none of them would have ever reached the flood stage. It would have filled both rivers up to flood to bank, and that like it's supposed to, not constantly run over. So that I just have got a lot of confidence in the Army Corps of Engineers to design something that benefits everybody.
That benefits.
Yep.
They also have the benefit of our taxpayer dollars. So it'd be
So-
great to bring some of the money back,
Yes,
right? And the
yes.
Corps is one way to do that, and to have this kind of project come in. So
Okay, thank
we're
you.
very excited, and thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thanks for the projector.
Thank you, Eric, for, for allowing us to borrow that. Okay, now we're on to the minutes. So members of the board received a copy of the August 10 minutes. Oh gosh, I forgot. What's the matter?
We forgot to unplug you.
Oh.
Unpluggers, we're failing at our job over here.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay. Minutes have been approved by Bob. May have,
I'll support.
Heather supported. Does anyone have any questions, discussion, or edits? Hearing none, may I have a roll call on the minutes?
Trustee Wright,
Yes.
Trustee Foster,
Yes.
Treasurer Jarvis,
Yes.
Supervisor Arts,
Yes. Motion carries. Treasurer's report.
Our August 1st, 2021 general fund beginning balance was $1,006,838.82. Our revenues totaled $84,008.11. Our expenditures totaled $58,272.35, leaving us with an ending balance of $1,032,574.58.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Heather? Members of the board?
Good job.
Oh, we will place Heather's report on file. Okay, Cheryl, do we have any disbursements?
none other than the regular monthly disbursements.
Okay, may I have a motion to pay the regular monthly bills, please?
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
All right, any questions or discussions? All right, hearing none, then Cheryl, may I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Wright?
Yes.
Trustee Foster?
Yes.
Treasurer Jarvis?
Yes.
Supervisor Arts?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Department reports will be next month, so be prepared. So that means you. And I'll need to remind Martha that she has to report. Let's see, correspondence. Cheryl, do we have any correspondence?
There is no correspondence.
No correspondence. Anyone else have any correspondence?
No.
Okay, nothing there. Public comment.
They all left.
It got,
I looked up.
it got very quiet. Okay, there's nothing on unfinished business this month, so we don't have to worry about that. New business for this month. In the course of reviewing the, of creating, I should say, the Holton, the new Holton fire contract, I came across something in the Muskegon Charter contract that was a bit distressing, I think. And it was something that was created in 1995 by a former board. And it was had to do with carbon monoxide. And apparently, as near as I can tell, and by the way, I have looked through all three of our contracts, the Dalton, Holton, and Muskegon Charter files, and I cannot find this letter that is supposed to have existed from 1995 from that board, but this contract says, subject to the provisions of this fire protection agreement, to respond to all emergency calls without delay and under the same conditions as it responds to emergency calls in Muskegon Charter Township, with the exception of carbon monoxide investigations, which the Board of Cedar Creek Township has opted to not provide in a letter dated January 5, 1995. So I found that somewhat disconcerting. Why would we not do carbon monoxide investigations?
That's very important. I mean,
Yes.
when that goes off,
I agree.
you could pass if.
Right. So at that point, when I saw that, I immediately contacted Chief Glotzbach, and I asked him what he thought about that. He was in fact aware of this, and I asked him what he thought, and he said he was aware of the language in the agreement under that administration in Cedar Creek Township, and at that time they wanted to keep that language. He believes, as I do, that it would be better for our residents if Muskegon Charter Township did respond. He did say that if they made a call, that they would report any health effects the fire department, responded to for carbon monoxide investigations. They would automatically do that. The chief did believe that it would not cause any big increase in responses, but would potentially help our residents. So what I'm asking is, I then contacted Jennifer Hodges, the supervisor, and told her that I would come to the board and ask for an addendum to our contract to take that out, or not an addendum, but an amendment to the fire agreement, that I believe we don't have to rewrite the whole contract, just an amendment, removing that from the contract. So I'm just going to remove that.
And that's all that is going to entail. It's not anything extra that they're
Not
going to
it,
charge
no,
anything
no,
extra or
we're just
anything.
removing that,
Okay.
that with just this portion, with the exception of carbon monoxide investigations, which the Board of Cedar Creek Township has opted to not provide in a letter dated January 5, 1999. And it was literally in commas. It was so I can remove that section without it changing the body of the paragraph at all. So it doesn't do anything. So it's under item A, section 2, conditions. It doesn't change the context of the paragraph at all in that section, other than I remove that particular portion of the amendment.
So you need a motion?
I need a motion. Jennifer will have to take that, I need a glass of water, to her board for approval. And
I will make that
to
motion.
her board, and so
That's-
so once
that's-
we make that, once we do that amendment, I keep saying amendment, once we do that, then she'll have to have that approved by her board.
I'll second that motion.
It is an amendment,
Mhm.
so, oh, thank you. I can't even swallow. Thank you so much.
Little perch.
Thank you so much. So, I was so focused on not being able to swallow, I didn't hear what went on.
Well, I made the motion, Peggy supported the motion.
Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding that or discussion?
How was this found?
When I
You
was.
read that, when you was reading through it?
I was, because we have a new fire chief
Mhm.
at Holton,
Right.
I had to redo their contract.
I see.
They are
Did you
having,
read over it?
and so I rewrote their entire contract.
Mhm.
And in fact, they are having a board meeting tonight to look at their contract. As a matter of course, I did not include that in their contract. There is no carbon monoxide. They automatically have carbon monoxide investigations in their contract.
I wonder if way back then they didn't have the carbon monoxide.
Well, you know what, Chief Gutzbach thinks that what happened is they were inundated at the time, and there was like maybe a high number of these, and then there was, you know, maybe a degree of inability to, you couldn't, they were, what he called it, like, they weren't reliable.
There could be that they needed to be worked on a little.
Yeah, and there were.
That's a possibility, or maybe it meant something that they were giving it away, because sometimes, you know, they give away monoxide testers, they also give away the fire.
They were inundated at the time, and I don't think they were all that, I think he said they weren't all that reliable at the time, and there was a huge amount of, maybe a huge amount of cost attached to it. And I think,
But now we know how this really works.
yeah. And so I think that may be, and the other thing that I discovered, the cost of these contracts. Back then, the cost was like $2,400 for our fire contracts.
That was a lot of money.
Yeah, back in 1995. And now they're, you know, $4,800, so 48,000, sorry, thank you.
One more zero.
Yeah, one more zero. That's why I am not the treasurer. And for which should be eternally grateful. So, but I'm a writer, not a treasurer. So, but they're redoing I redid their contract. They are having their board meeting at Holton tonight and voting on whether or not they will accept that. Bob Grabinski did look at it and said it looked good to him. It just had to go before their board.
So you do have a motion, you do have support.
So
We had
have to-
discussion,
And now we
just
just
need a
have to
roll
vote on it.
yes.
Okay. Trustee Wright?
Yes.
Trustee Foster?
Yes.
Treasurer Jarvis?
Yes.
Supervisor Arts?
Yes. I will make that amendment and then send that off to Supervisor Hodges. Okay, now we're on to ZBA. And this is another good one. This is Rich and Danielle Martincheck are moving to Indiana for Danielle's work, And Rich has regretfully resigned from his position on the ZBA. Our zoning administrator, Lorraine, who kindly just brought me the water, has been hot on my heels to get a ZBA meeting on the books. So I thought it prudent to nominate a new ZBA member. And we love it when people approach us because they are interested in serving the township. And to that end, I would like to nominate John Vold for zoning Board of Appeals. John is the PE instructor at Holton Elementary. He also lives on Sweet Lake Drive, which is good because we now have all areas of the township represented on the zoning board. And he also has the Ethan Jarvis seal of approval, which is really good. He's also a friend of Heather and Jason Jarvis. May I please have a motion to place John Vold's name before the board for a term set to expire December 31st to 2024.
I'll make that motion.
I'll support.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or discussion on that nomination?
We don't have John here at all. He didn't.
He was not able to join us
Oh, okay.
tonight. He was in here the other day though. He's a really nice young man. Nice young man.
Would you like a roll call?
Roll call, please.
Trustee Wright?
Yes.
Trustee Foster?
Yes.
Treasurer Jarvis?
Yes.
Supervisor Arts?
Yes. Motion carries. Board comments.
I do have one comment. There's a fundraiser coming up October 2nd. One of our residents that lives over by the Maple Island store
Oh, I
had an accident,
gosh.
John Bell.
He's still in a wheelchair, isn't he?
He's getting tingling in his hands, but they're gonna have a fundraiser October 2nd, and it's gonna be at 7 Mile Inn. Registration's 11 o'clock. They're taking any donations they can get, but I guess insurance isn't, they don't have insurance, or it's not covering some of the stuff he's having done. I talked to his son-in-law and daughter the other night, and they kind of explained it to me a little bit. I did have all that information on my phone, but it zapped off for some reason. But I will get some flyers and get them to the hall and get them to
We
some.
should be able to, between your Facebook post and.
We can definitely do
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
most definitely. And if
Yeah.
you want flyers, I could even put them up in the store or whatever too.
Well, they're gonna give me flyers and
Mhm.
stuff, but I had the information on my phone and it was there, then it went away. It said this attachment's not good right now, or what did it say? I can tell you real quick.
So we have this date of October 2nd. Did you have
This
a time?
content isn't available right now, so.
I think he said registration is 7 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
Oh, 11?
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's gonna be a poker run for the motorcyclists, but I think people wanna go there. There's gonna be cornhole tournaments there. It's gonna be for, people are in cars or whatever. There's gonna be stuff going on at the bar during the day. Motorcycles won't be returning until 5 o'clock in the
Oh.
afternoon.
okay.
But I just thought, I heard about it. I've been going there supporting the restaurant and stuff like that. Place has been absolutely packed, so he's getting, and he was building a new garage. And man, he's had great help coming out and finishing that too, so.
What
Just-
restaurant?
Pardon?
Restaurant?
Which restaurant?
7 Mile Inn.
7 Mile Inn. And I can't tell you the road it's on because I just, along the river. but I'll get you some information
Okay.
though.
Thanks, Bob.
Because they're supposed to get me a bunch of flyers and I'm gonna start putting them up all over. so.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
No, my senior millage was canceled for this month, so I have nothing to report.
So we don't know, I sent in our,
Yeah, you've sent it all in, but now we're gonna have to wait until next month's meeting.
okay, you know it's been received?
I do not.
Oh.
As they didn't say
Okay.
even reasons why it was
Oh.
even canceled.
Okay, I
So
sent,
I can't answer
I
that,
did
but-
send it in, but they never even respond, so,
But it was canceled this month, so
Okay.
we're gonna have to wait a little longer.
okay. Okay. Heather? Cheryl, do you have anything?
No, nothing.
I don't have anything. So, public comments? Okay, I think
Motion to adjourn.